Mr. McGregor, Richard Pearce Saunderson, a member of the public, I've witnessed your conflagration there, and I thought you were actually quite rude to members of the public that you're supposed to represent.
I do apologise. I wasn't rude to members of the public. I was trying to sort of engage in a conversation with Anne. We are, without a doubt, in difficult times.
But the person filming you was a member of the public, wasn't he?
Yes, but
I thought you were quite rude.
I think he was trying to be confrontational with me, and I think he has a political agenda which in fact is quite...
I would disagree with that, because this is a cross-party day of action today.
Fine. You know, let's discuss it with you in all fairness, because you're not seeking to sort of try and disconvenience or discommode me. Can I just...
But the public's been discommoded by having its library threatened. So I'm quite surprised that as a member, as an elected member,
Sure.
you are supposed to represent the interests of the people who voted.
Correct.
And a lot of the people who voted for you...
Which is why I'm here.
Yeah.
I
I find it very disappointing that you weren't here when we had 162 people here who might have liked to hear your views.
Well, this morning?
Yes.
I apologise. The reason I wasn't here was because I had a phone call from someone who was very concerned about the transfer of their grandson and was very distressed about it. So as soon as I dealt with that, I came across it, and I apologise for that. I didn't know what time this event was starting, so I am here now anyway. So that's that.
But don't you think that as an elected member representing the interests of the public who voted for you, many of whom were here this morning, that you should sign the petition supporting our cause to keep Stradbroke Library open?
Well, because I will do my own part to keep Stradbroke Library open, because I'm in a position to make that happen.
Doesn't that mean that you should sign the petition?
Well, I will be doing... Well, I think in a way, I'm signing a petition against myself. It's a bit strange to do that. I am in a position to try and keep Stradbroke Library open, because I'm a member of the Cabinet of Suffolk County Council, right? And I will be doing that. But we are faced with, we are genuinely faced with a situation whereby the biggest funder of services in Suffolk, which is the government, are reducing its contribution to our services by 30% over the next 4 years.
Is it not also true that Suffolk County Council spent £10 million on a contract with BT which did not work out, and so that a lot of these cuts are actually
that is
not
not strictly true. That particular contract was entered into by the previous administration. Now, there were flaws in that particular contract which I fully recognise. I fully recognise that. But I don't want to sort of particular cast blame, but that was signed by the Lib Dems and Labour Party, and there were flaws in that particular contract.
Who was the chief executive of the county council at the time?
I think it was Mike Moore.
So that was before Andrea Hill's time?
Yes. Oh, yes. That's the contract we're talking about.
And so, but that contract did pay for Andrea Hill to fly out to the States to have conversations with them, as far as I understand from the stuff published in The Guardian.
I mean, The Guardian certainly has got the story about Andrea Hill and BT from, I think, the deputy leader of the Lib Dems of Suffolk County Council. Now, but the actual facts behind that, I say that particular contract was signed when they were in power. The contract was flawed in relationship with BT, that is certainly true, and we've been doing our best to put it right since then. And that's a position on, that's a fact.
Don't you think a lot of politicians use blaming the previous administration in a fairly facile way?
Oh, is it facile? Well, I mean, I was saying to you that the contract for the Customer Service Direct was signed by the previous administration. Okay. That is a matter of fact.
Okay.
Now, it's also a matter of fact there are some flaws in that particular contract, and that's a matter of fact. It's also true to say that discreetly and with BT are seeking to improve that particular contract, and that is a matter of fact.
Returning to the library, you said if you signed the petition, you'd be signing a petition against yourself. However, when you say that you wish Stradbroke Library to stay open, does that not mean that you're speaking against yourself as well?
How do you mean?
Well, if the county council has decided that they are withdrawing funding from libraries, you voted for that, correct?
Well, we're going out for consultation in terms of the future library service.
That is not in favour of reducing funding to libraries from the county council.
I'm in favour of balancing the budget of Suffolk County Council and finding ways whereby we can do things better in a more efficient way. It's a tough call, I know, but I believe it can be done. If you take, for example, my particular responsibility, which is public transport.
Yes, which includes the closing of the Berry Road.
Correct. Berry Road Park and Ride. That is quite correct. Berry Road Park and Ride was costing us £250,000 a year in subsidy, direct subsidy. The number of people using it, despite our best efforts, was reducing. In terms of carbon emissions, it was neutral because there were fewer people using it. The Berry Road Park and Ride site was not owned by the Suffolk County Council, so we could hand back the actual site back to the owners. And we're still keeping the Park and Ride, which runs from London Road through the centre of Ipswich to the hospital. That we are keeping. But in terms of that, that's £250,000 for subsidising people who already got cars. I thought it much better to try and use that money elsewhere in terms of providing subsidies for people in parts of Suffolk who've got no transport.
Coming back to the library again, so
Certainly.
how do you suggest that we raise the funds to keep running this library when we know that the parish council's precept is only £25,000, when we've been saying that when Suffolk County Council suddenly come back to us and say, well, you're going to have, in your words, at least £15,000 coming into the library. I work in the charitable sector, so I know that the government cuts will mean that there will be increasing pressure on charitable organisations to fund things, and a small village like this can't fund £15,000 to keep a vital service open. By the support we had here this morning, almost 200, and I'm sure that by the end of next week we will have significantly more than 200 signatures. Why won't Suffolk County Council decide to make cuts elsewhere, such as in middle management and overpaid consultants and, I must say, overpaid chief executives, to make an example?
Let's deal with that particular point which you raised, which is absolutely a fair point to make. In terms of management costs of Suffolk County Council, as an organisation, as a bureaucracy, which is what we actually are. I mean, we are creatures of law. We have to go through certain procedures, and that costs money. There's no two ways about that. But in terms of how we do our business, in terms of being a county council, we vie with Kent for being the most cost-efficient county council in the country. It's either them or us in terms of delivery of service. It's a total cost of management.
What's more important, cost efficiency or serving your public?
Well, if you've actually got, in terms of a county council, an organisation which, in terms of its bureaucracy, its overhead cost, is about the cheapest in the country. That then means the money we actually raise from the people of Suffolk by way of council tax and the government grants we actually get is better spent on frontline services. So in terms of competency, right, we can always improve, but we are among the best, if not the best.
But that ignores, to an extent, two of the points that I made. One additional point is to make, if you're already raising money from the people of Suffolk County, but then you're asking them to pay again for the same service by saying, let's find extra funding for the library because we're withdrawing it, but you're actually paying rates for frontline services anyway, that seems ridiculous. And secondly, the point that I was making was, should people who are employed by Suffolk County Council at the top not take pay cuts to actually set an example, because we're supposed to be living in times of austerity, and yet we have people on the TV, managers of Suffolk County Council, saying, yes, I know it's a very big salary, and I was very surprised when I was offered the big salary, to quote Andrea Hill, and yet she's not taking a pay cut to set an example. There are lots of people in this village who are on the breadline. We have lots of people in this village who live in county council accommodation who probably cannot afford many things that people like you and me can probably afford.
Yeah, I accept entirely what you're saying though. In terms of an organisation, and we can argue about the level of salaries paid, and I would certainly accept in Suffolk terms to pay anybody working in Suffolk something in excess of £250,000 a year, in the great scheme of things, is a lot of money. I mean, it is no doubt about that. But if you really want delivery of services of a high quality, which I believe Suffolk County Council does, and I think the Audit Commission will confirm that, I do believe it's right and proper to have a high quality management team, particularly if that management team is small. I mean, the other alternative perhaps, I would argue the other way, is this. In terms of you have a larger number of people paid a much lesser sum, which in its totality is actually costing you more and not delivering a good a service as the County Council does deliver.
But can we say that the County Council is actually being run efficiently when the County Council, and especially the leaders of the County Council, are ignoring the public outcry over, one, their salaries, over the way that they are deciding to implement these cuts, when we see neighbouring county councils, and I'd take Norfolk as an example, where the chief executive is paid quite a lot less than Andrea Hill, and they aren't closing their libraries.
Yeah. The management costs of Norfolk County Council are greater than Suffolk County Council's. In terms of the way you actually handle it, the perception which we've got in Suffolk County Council is this, that the old way of doing things in the past, in terms of managing the budgets of local government, is no longer sustainable. The fact of the matter is that we've actually going to be receiving, I keep coming to the point, less money from central government to running our services. Now that, in essence, in the past, our complaint has been we're not getting as much as other councils. The fact is, there's going to be a cut in central government funding Suffolk County Council, and we've got to find a better way. Now, it may well be that the full horror of what's facing us over the next few years has not really dawned on some of our neighbouring authorities. That's for them to answer.
I think the full horror hasn't dawned on anybody.
Well, that
To be perfectly
well, I
honest,
think
because we are in danger of a double-dip recession.
well, that's a separate issue which you can take up with Dan Porter, who seems to know about these things. What I'm concerned with here is about the issue, as your county council.